We all enjoy hunting right here in the UP, but we've all talked about that big hunting trip to somewhere else. Maybe north to Canada or out west. If there's one thing I've learned about the UP, it's that everything we want is right here in our backyard. I traveled to the Porcupine Mountains in the western UP to find out if that whitetail trip could be right here in our own backyard.
There's lots of opportunities for hunting in the park. In fact, people often maybe don't know that the park is open to hunting, and the majority of the park is open to hunting, and people do come here to hunt popular game species or white-tailed deer, black bear, or ruffed grouse, but definitely the white-tailed deer is what appeals to a lot of people. Come here to do some deer hunting. We're sitting inside of one of our park rustic cabins right now. This is the Gitchagumi cabin. We've got 17 of these rustic cabins available to rent in the park, and there's also 4 yurts that are available to rent. So hunters can rent these cabins. They can come in and they can venture out and do some true backcountry hunting here in the park. The cabins are available by rent. They're $60 a night. Doesn't matter what size cabin you stay in. The cabin we're in right now is an 8-bunk cabin, but some of our cabins go all the way down to as many as just 2 bunks. So there's 2, 4, 6, and 8 bunk cabins available. As I said, they're all $60 a night plus an $8 reservation fee. With the exception of Gitchagumi, all of the cabins you have to hike into, so anywhere from 1 mile to as much as 4 miles to get in. And the cabins are rustic. They're equipped very simply. There's bunk beds with pads on the mattresses. There's cookware, there's a coffee pot, there's a wood stove, but the user of the cabin pretty much provides everything else. You bring your water, bring your light, you got to put up some firewood to keep you warm in here, and anything that you're going to consume, whether it be toilet paper or food, you want to bring all that stuff with you. The hunters who come here to the park often come here because there's unique opportunities here at the park. This is an area that you can't use your four-wheelers in the park, so that appeals to a lot of people. They like to come and venture out on foot and get into some of the backcountry areas. You often don't see any other hunters when you're out hunting around, and the hunters who tend to come here are quite adventurous. They do a lot of hunting by foot. They're out there. Maybe they'll sit for the first and last daylight hours of the hunt, and then the rest of the time during daylight hours they're walking around, they're scouting, they're maybe cutting tracks of some bucks and following them through the woods. So there's a lot of really, really interesting opportunities here in the park, and definitely staying at one of these cabins is a nice way to go. Don't overlook the yurts that we have available in the park, especially the Little Union River yurt and the Lost Creek yurt. Yurts are maybe not quite as solid as what a cabin is. You've got a wood deck floor, and then you've got kind of a poly canvas material for the wall with some wood lattice work, but they're equipped pretty much the same as what our rustic cabins are. They sleep 4 people. They are insulated. They actually heat up better than our cabins do in the wintertime because they heat up really fast. And they're in some good areas for deer hunting, especially those 2 cabins that are the 2 yurts that I mentioned, the Little Union River yurt and the Lost Creek yurt, because they're kind of right on the transition line between some of the old growth forest and then some of the younger growth forest of the eastern end of the park. And they rent for the same price as what the rustic cabins do. They're all $60 a night. And also for hunters who maybe don't want to stay in a cabin, maybe they want to camp, there's also camping opportunity here in the park. Our campgrounds are all open through hunting season. Now, you can't hunt right outside of the modern campgrounds. They're both in safety zones for logical reasons. Those areas immediately adjacent are closed. But some of the smaller, the outpost campgrounds, which are on either the eastern or the southern perimeter of the park, these are small little primitive campgrounds. They basically have a vault toilet. You provide your own water at these places, and those are also in some really good deer hunting areas. And in fact, I talked to a fellow just this year who's planning a trip up here. He's going to do a combination bow hunting for deer and bow hunting for black bear trip, and he was telling me that for many years he and his buddies have been going out west going elk hunting, and they just can't afford to do that anymore. So what they're doing is they're going to set up their base camp at one of our outpost campgrounds, but they're also going to bring some of their spike camp equipment, and they're going to set up a spike camp on the interior of the park as well. Camping fees are $14 per night for groups of 1 to 4 people, and that's either at the primitive, the outpost camps, or also for a backcountry camp. So if you're thinking of doing a spike camp, then you need a backcountry camping permit, and that's the same price, $14 a night for groups of 1 to 4 people. Depending on which cabin you choose, the forest cover can be drastically different. The very eastern and the very northern portions of the park are second growth timber. Those areas have been logged either around the turn of the century or into the early 1950s, late 1940s. But many of the cabins are also in the old growth forest of the park. So if if hunting the big timber is what you had in mind, then cabins like Greenstone Falls, Section 17, the Mirror Lake cabins, those are all surrounded by old growth forest. And those are in the interior portion of the park, which is the high ground interior of the park, but doesn't maybe have quite the dramatic relief as you would find maybe at like the Lake of the Clouds cabin. Lake of the Clouds, you're nestled right on the shore of Lake of the Clouds, but immediately north of you, you've got the escarpment ridge there, so there's a 300-foot precipice right out back that you got to climb up. So when you get up into some of the higher grounds of the park too, you tend to find more of the oak trees, so more acorns, a little bit more opportunity for food sources for animals like deer. And then some of the other parks, along the shoreline can really be a mixture of forest cover. At the mouth of the Big Carp River, there's 3 cabins there: the Big Carp 4 Lake Superior cabin and the Big Carp 6 cabin. You've got you got old growth forest right on the interior, but you can kind of have a transitional forest down near the shoreline. So yeah, and definitely if you're planning a trip a little further out, maybe for next year, plan on coming out here in the spring and in the summer, or even early fall of next year. Do some scouting, use the maps and stuff that we can provide you, and get out there and kind of check out the deer use patterns. Look for places you think that they're going to congregate, because their use patterns do change with the seasons here in the park. So it's kind of a great excuse to just get out and do some exploring, do some scouting year round. One thing that does appeal to a lot of the hunters also is the lack of hunting pressure here in the park, because you're not allowed to use four-wheelers and you often have to hike a long distance into some of your locations. Some of the areas in the park doesn't get a lot of hunting pressure. So whether it's if the deer are getting a little bit older in those areas, or maybe they're not getting pushed or is accustomed to people, you do get kind of a definite wilderness style hunting experience when you come hunt here in the park. Most of the hunters who are coming here, they're not sitting for long periods of time. They're venturing out on foot. They're venturing into areas where there's no trails and not seeing many other hunters, and kind of hunting the old school way, the old style of getting out and doing some deer hunting, which that really is what appeals to a lot of the hunters who come here. They can rent a simple little cabin like this with some of their buddies, and they can get out there on foot and maybe test some of their traditional woodsman skills, and really work hard to get an opportunity at a crack at a nice big buck. There's definitely opportunities for a lot of different types of adventurous hunts out here, even things that maybe you wouldn't even think about doing in Michigan, such as setting up a base camp and a spike camp in a more remote area and hiking in for a few days to hunt that area hard. So there is a lot of opportunity here in the park for hunters. There's no special rules for the hunting season, so there's no special permits or anything that you need to get in advance to hunt here in the park. All Michigan hunting rules and regulations apply here just like they would in state forest areas around. If you're thinking about planning a hunt here, whether it's this year or next year, one of the first steps would be to contact the park. Talk to park staff, and we can provide more information. One of the first things that we're going to ask is, what kind of an experience are you looking for? What is it that you want to see and do while you're here? And then we can help you to plan your trip. Maybe give you some suggested areas to go stay, or cabins to rent, and areas to maybe concentrate your hunting or scouting efforts in. So definitely contact the park at any time with any questions that you have about the process.